Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I beg leave to move for the adoption of the minutes of the last sitting of the Honourable Senate, which was held on the 25th day of January, 2021. If I may obtain a seconder.
Madam President, I move the second.
It has been moved and seconded that the minutes as presented for January 25th, 2021 be accepted as there are no additions, deletions, corrections. Being none, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The minutes of January 2021 are accepted as presented. Motions for leave of absence, leave to resign, swearing in of new senators, communications by the President, messages from the Governor General, messages from the House of Assembly.
Message from the House of Assembly.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
The House number 66. Message to the Honorable the President and Honorable members of the Senate from the Speaker and representatives of the Honorable House of Assembly. The House of Assembly acquaints the Honorable the Senate that they have agreed to the following resolution and desire the consent of that Honorable Chamber, namely, now therefore be it resolved that this House, A, approves the continuance of the proclamation of emergency made on the 24th day of November 2020 until the 23rd day of May 2021. B, affirms the continuance in effect of the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Risk Management Regulations 2020 made on the 24th day of November 2020 until the 23rd day of May 2021. C, affirms the continuance in effect of the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Risk Management Order 2020, made on the 24th day of November 2020 until the 23rd day of May 2021. And D, affirms the continuance in effect of the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Risk Management Special Provisions Order 2020, made on the 24th day of November 2020 until the 23rd day of May 2021. House of Assembly, Nassau, 27th January 2021. House and Military Speaker.
If the documents be brought up. If the documents be on the table. Laying of documents by ministers.
No, first reading.
Communications by ministers.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam
Chair
President,
recognizes Senator Bethel.
Madam President, with your permission and having also informed the leader opposite, I rise to make a formal communication to the Senate with regard to a certain editorial in a newspaper making grievous allegations against the Most Honorable the Prime Minister, which I must address because those allegations are demonstrably false. I have read and noted the Nassau Guardian editorial of today's date under the heading, quote, "We deserve better." The editor makes a number of legal assertions while accusing the Most Honorable Prime Minister of making statements in the House of Assembly, which he or she asserts were demonstrably false. The allegation that an MP and minister, and indeed Prime Minister, would make demonstrably false statements to the House of Assembly is a most serious allegation, as it cuts to the paramount duty of ministers and members of Parliament to always speak truth in Parliament. The core legal allegation made by the Nassau Guardian is, and I quote, and for the avoidance of doubt, I have a copy of the resolution, of the editorial. All these circumstances, including quarantining and curfews, could be controlled by any legislation the government had, if the government had. No, pardon me, let me read it again. All these circumstances, including quarantining and curfews, could be controlled by any legislation the government had the will to amend or draft and send to Parliament to be debated and passed. To this assertion, I emphatically state that the Nassau Guardian is ill-advised legally. So far as judicial rulings on the matter, matters similar to this in other jurisdictions, there is a case from the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, namely Suraj against the Attorney General, a case that I have referred to in this place before, and a case from which I advised my cabinet colleagues before. This case deals directly with the question of the difference between health ordinances or regulations which are made under laws passed by Parliament and emergency powers which are constitutionally granted powers. There are clear limitations upon health regulations made under statutes passed by Parliament. Paragraphs 98 to 100 of the ruling of Guru Singh, Mr. Justice, as he then was, he's now a Justice of Appeal, clearly shows that the power to impose a curfew and the like cannot arise from ordinary legislation passed by Parliament. If I may, I will read now the paragraphs of the ruling which I have referred to, which are relevant. His Lordship says in paragraph 98, it also seems to me that public health regulations to prevent the spread of infections and dangerous diseases fall within a narrow compass of exceptional laws which permit a minister leeway to restrict certain of the rights and freedoms under the Constitution. It is often necessary in these matters to act quickly and efficiently to ensure that the spread of the disease is contained as much as possible. It is to be noted that these measures took place after the proclamation by the President on the 21st January 2020 that the virus was a dangerous infectious disease. Mr. Ram Logan, representing the defendant, the Attorney General, has referred the court to the state of emergency provisions under the Constitution. These allow for the declaration of a state of emergency where there is an outbreak of the disease. However, the law allows two bites of the cherry, as it were. There is first the provision of the ordinance, that is what they call their regulation, made under the law, the law governing health protection and health services in Trinidad. There is first the provision of the ordinance, which allows the President to make the declaration as was done here, and as was done previously for the Ebola virus. Paragraph 100. However, there is a second layer of law available where the outbreak of infectious disease has expanded to such an extent that it leads to a state of affairs so serious in the country, which then triggers the operation of the emergency provisions of the Constitution and allows for the declaration of a state of emergency. His Lordship continues. The two are distinct. In such case, with an emergency declaration under the Constitution, wider powers will be available in terms of the imposition of curfews and the like. The clear distinction is this, that under laws passed by Parliament, where there is some proclamation of medical emergency, there are distinct limitations on the powers that can be exercised to prevent the spread of infection. And the only way to have the full plenitude of powers, and in particular, the power to impose a curfew and the like, is by way of an emergency declaration under the Constitution, not under a law passed by Parliament. Let me first say in terms of the weight, if you will, of this ruling. Trinidad, like the Bahamas, is a constitutional democracy with a constitution based on the Westminster model. Its courts, like those of the Bahamas, exercise their jurisdiction based on the common law, where their job is to interpret statutes and thereby in their interpretation condition, shape, and sometimes make new law as to how powers can be exercised pursuant to statute. This is a decision that is directly in point in every Westminster constitutional jurisdiction around the world. While it is not a decision of our Supreme Court, it is, and therefore not binding, it is highly what we call persuasive. It is persuasive authority because it addresses the two critical issues before us: the powers that can be granted by Parliament and the powers that are granted and can be granted by the Constitution. Therefore, the impact of this particular ruling is that were we to operate under statute, there would be considerable legal challenges to the plenitude of these actions that have been taken. The law and the efficacy of the emergency of such laws would be cast into doubt. And the government has always, at every step of the way, Madam President, erred in favor of seeking to attain the highest degree of legal certainty so that the public would not have any justifiable reason to doubt the efficiency and effectiveness of the legal regime, which we all must adhere to. So the question then arises, what mandates could fall into the same category as curfews? Remember, the case says curfews and the like. So how do we interpret that? What kinds of powers would certainly be like curfews? Certainly, island-specific lockdowns, travel bans, banning people from leaving and fleeing an island that is facing an impending lockdown and hopping on their boats and going to some other island, as has occurred, and carrying the infection with them. These would be powers that would be like a curfew, to lock down a whole island, to restrict travel to and fro. In fact, in some cases, absolutely no travel except emergency travel were permitted. And then for situations now where the law now says that if an island is under an impending lockdown, you cannot, and if you do flee to another island, you break the law and you will be punished. These are powers and mandates that are like curfews. The general lockdown of every business except for essential businesses is also similar, because as the case in other portions, as the case was built by the judge, he made the point that powers under statutory law issued by Parliament are governed by the principle of proportionality. You have to show that the measure you implement is proportional to the threat affecting that particular individual or posed by that particular individual or that particular business. So the power to shut down every business on the principle that enclosed spaces and people working close together is likely to cause infection of all persons in that room, you'd have to be shown that it has caused it under ordinary law. The powers of the government to protect the Bahamian people would be entirely crippled. And what we have today, crippled in the threat of the first form of coronavirus. What do we do now, today, when we have we are staring in the face of highly infectious mutations of that original virus, which by the estimation of the United Kingdom government is up to 70% more infectious. The efforts of the government to protect the lives and preserve the national healthcare system, the lives of Bahamians, and to preserve our national healthcare system would be totally crippled if we were hampered by this principle of proportionality, and that in every case, we had to show that this person or this particular business posed an active threat. Wait for the hotspots to develop. Wait for the hotspots to develop in every business in this country and face a totally overwhelmed healthcare system. So, Madam President, it is my view that the editor of the Nassau Guardian owes an apology to the Prime Minister. It's okay to have a difference of opinion, but to allege that somebody misled Parliament by making demonstrably false statements is going a little far. And I would suggest that the Nassau Guardian newspaper owes an apology to the Prime Minister. I now table, Madam President, a copy of the Siraj case to enter the records of this Honourable Senate. And let me say that I understand that certain statements were made, and I don't propose to speak to them at this point, by the Leader of the Opposition in the other place yesterday, which were demonstrably false about me, and I will address them when we speak on the resolution.
Okay, the documents be brought up.
Thank you, Madam
Okay,
President.
the documents lie on the table.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. As a courtesy, the Leader of the government did indicate that he was going by way of this communication. The thing that always troubles me about this is that there is a rule that communications are not supposed to be contentious.
You gave the law.
Well, the problem is that
I'll say my speech.
that's fine. The problem is that our view is it is contentious.
No, that's your fault.
You see the problem? You see the problem? You see the problem?
When you finish,
It demonstrates it exactly.
Well, I guess opinion would have been a better way.
That's right. So what I'm saying, it is exactly. It is my opinion,
Okay.
and the point is, Madam President, is that the law, as I read the editorial, I don't see anything which is so patently offensive, which would dictate responding in the way that he did, which could not wait until the actual debate when we would have a chance to respond to it. It said that what the Guardian's editorial said, that's not for me to defend them, but the Guardian's editorial simply said that what the provision that they're relying on is actually false. It didn't say that the Prime Minister misled the Parliament. It just said that what he said was false. So this brings me to the next point. The next point is that we ourselves made the point. The leader of the opposition from the beginning of this pandemic indicated that it was our view that you had the statute law that could deal with this. So all this is, as far as I can see, is an honest disagreement about what the state of the law is. A point which could have been made during his debate. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. First of all, Madam President, let me say that it is for you to determine what is contentious. We can only express our opinions about whether something is contentious or not. It is for the chair to determine that.
Well,
And second, yeah, sorry, it's Madam President.
well, my evaluation of your presentation is not that your statements were contentious. And I think we're talking about a matter of how one reads a document and what your personal interpretation of the document. You read the document and came up with what you did. Senator Mitchell read the document and felt that it was perfectly fine, and that is his opinion, to which he is completely entitled. And you also chose to respond to it as a separate communication, as opposed to in your thing. And so,
Yes, I'll explain that. You see, the quote that the NASA Guardian said before they came to the quote that I read, they said here, the Prime Minister said, if there were no emergency orders, we could not mandate the wearing of masks. But he also said, and other life-saving measures. They said, this is demonstrably false. No, sir. Based on the authority of the law, persuasive authority from a sister jurisdiction on the same point, it is not demonstrably false to say that the power to order other life-saving measures is demonstrably false. Okay, and it's on that basis, because the Prime Minister didn't limit that comment to wearing masks. Yes, you can order masks under a health mandate passed by the Parliament. No question of that. But the other life-saving measures, such as curfews, such as travel bans, no. Such as a general lockdown, no, in my view. These are curfews and the like, as specified in the Trinidadian law, which can only be done under emergency powers. But, Madam President, so that is that point. And yeah, he said mass and other life-saving measures is the quote. No, he said yes, but please, other life-saving measures.
All I'm saying is that as far as I can tell, the Attorney General gave his opinion of the law, which the government should follow. And the National Guard has no opinion to it. So it presumes that the law that National Guard has a problem with it. And say that here's what I'm going to tell them. That's all.
And they should do that, but the point is to accuse a member of making a demonstrably false statement. That is what strikes to the heart of it, and that is what merited a communication response.
Senator Mitchell, can you take a seat, please? Thank you. I think we're talking about a matter of interpretation of a written document. Based on the fact that Senator Beckel responded based on legal grounds that he has found and used to document his response, he is entitled. You have decided that you do not agree. It's a matter of opinion. And when and how he presents that is of his choosing.
President, forgive me for just reading this, which you might consider a dead horse. But the point is, I simply started off. The substratum of my argument is this. The rules say at communication stage, avoid controversy. It has invited controversy because after all of that, let's concede the point that you made, Madam President, with respect. After all of that, he then goes on to say that the Nassau Guardian owes an apology. Yes, it does. Well, that obviously is contentious.
Sir, you are
Obviously
not in charge of
contentious.
the Guardian. That is his opinion, and we will allow.
I
the
understand.
Guardian
My
to
only
make a
point is
decision
contentious.
as to
It is
whether or not
contentious. It is
they
contentious.
want
That's
to
my
make
point.
a-
It is contentious.
You are the only one who can raise contention as an issue here, not anybody outside of you.
No. I am raising the point as a member of the Senate. I am raising
You
the
have
point.
made your statement.
Because the
It
rules-
is in the record
Right.
that you feel that it was contentious. It's in the record. Can we continue, please? Senator Becker?
Yes. Oh, thank you. Which part of the agenda are we on now? I think it's we moved beyond communications by minutes. It should be communications by senators.
Senators,
now.
yes.
I know. Come on. Okay, Senator. We will start the debate soon, man. Hold your horses.
Communications by senators, questions, and, yes,
That's right, sir.
we recognize Senator Mitchell.
Thank you. This is not supposed to be contentious. Madam President, I wanted to offer, I know that Senator Jo Beth Colby spoke to this at the last session, the condolences formally of the Progressive Liberal Party side and the opposition on the passing of Valentino Obena. I moved to do this because of the personal relationship that I had with him as a former colleague of the Broadcasting Corporation of the Bahamas, where I worked from the year 1977 to 1979. And he started off there as a cameraman, and then later came again to join here at the Parliamentary channel. I attended his final service on the weekend and was moved by the extent to which the community showed up, and also the extent to which he was admired and loved by his family. We come to these places as a matter of routine to meetings, and don't often appreciate the backstory about how everyone comes to work there and what their role is in their own families and the jobs that they have. He was a very sociable man, and also was admired by those of his colleagues at the Broadcasting Corporation for all the work which he did. And for all of those reasons, I would like to offer condolences on his passing. As it happens at these funerals, you actually get to know the backstory of what the relationships are like. And it turns out that Mr. Peter Campbell, who is also a part of the Broadcasting Corporation and worked there, came to work there when I had worked over those 2 years from 1977 to 1979, is actually his first cousin. Their mothers are actually sisters. So shows small country and shows how we're all interlinked. But I would like to say that it's very sad that he's passed, a man 62 years old, I believe, taken down in this very unfortunate health situation that we find in our country today. I would also like to express condolences to the families again of Leon Taylor, who passed from the Foxville area, and Miss Gwendolyn Clark, who died at the age of 106. A long innings, and she indicated, this is a story which has been told many times throughout the village and constituency, that she said, at the last birthday I was at, I said, I wish you many, many more. And she shook her head and said, no, don't wish me that, because I'm ready to go. It's time for me to go. All my friends are gone. No reason for me to stick around. I want to meet my Lord. So she's had a wish, which came during the Christmas period, sadly for us. And so my condolences to her family, and of course, to Leon Taylor again for his contribution which he made to the culture of our country. Lastly, on this note, I'd like to express my condolences to the family of the late Terence Bethel, who served our party as a national vice chair, who died at the age of 57. It was a sudden death, and it stunned all of us. I'm sure in your own organization, the pre-national movement, people who are sort of there for you all the time. And again, this is a deeply personal event for me because through all the changing scenes of my own political life, he's been a standard and a standard bearer everywhere, from the demonstrations in front of the Supreme Court to fighting for majority rule as a holiday, fighting for national honors, the national honor system, establishment of our men's branch, International Men's Day. He made a wonderful contribution to all of these things, and he will be sadly missed. So condolences to his family, his father, Carl Bethel, who is still with us, thankfully, and to his brothers.
That's Carl Bethel.
Yes, Carl. Yes, right. Yes, right. Yes.
Just to make it clear.
Yes, he's got about 4 names. Yes, right. Yes. Anyway, the voice of Zed Ness, who's the work at Zed Ness, Carl Bethel. Finally, I was hoping by this time this young man would be here. He's certainly the youngest friend that I have. He turns 2 years old today. His name is Chosen, and he's Chosen Darville. He's the son of Gerard Darville, who is one of the aspirants for the Pinewood constituency for us. But I wanted to mention this, Madam Chair, because I first met this youngster when he was 3 months old, and his father was taking me around a tour of the community garden in Pinewood. That was just remarkable to see the relationship which existed between the then baby and his father. So we go inside the house, and the father delivers him over to his mother. And it was just fascinating to me to watch the conversation, and I say conversation, which took place between his mother and this 3-month-old baby. 3-month-old baby's looking at his mother, and his mother is saying to him, "So, Daddy woke you up early. You've had an early morning. Are they giving you a hard time?" And the child is actually responding to his mother's words. And it moved me because it shows what all the people have been saying is that parents have to have, and I'm sure everyone in here is fed, with the exception of me, must be close to their children, nurture their children, and help them grow up to be strong men and women. And so when his father told me that he was turning 2 today, it seemed remarkable that the time has passed so quickly. And I've watched him because he goes almost everywhere with his father. And I remember when we started here in this session of the Senate, we had talked about amending the rules to allow for women who have babies, who serve as senators, to be able to bring the babes actually onto the floor if it is required to do. I think they've amended the rules of the Senate and Congress in the United States to allow a similar thing. So I just wanted to wish my youngest friend, I think the youngest friend, 2 years old, happy birthday. And I wish his family all the best. I hope he grows up to become a good and productive citizen of our Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Thank you very much.
Questions, answers to questions, presentation of petitions, appointed and selected reviews, reports of committees, first reading of bills.
Yes, Madam President.
Chair recognizes Senator Berger.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I beg leave to move for the first reading of the following document, bill. A bill for an act to repeal and replace the Civil Aviation Act 2016 to modernize the regulation of civil aviation in the Bahamas in accordance with the Chicago Convention and for connected purposes, and it's signed and dated on the front as the date when we are asking for first reading. If I may obtain a second.
Madam President, I rise to second.
Thank you.
It has been moved and seconded that a bill for an act to repeal and replace the Civil Aviation Act 2016 to modernize the regulation of civil aviation in the Bahamas in accordance with the Chicago Convention and for connected purposes. As many as are in favor,
Aye.
those opposed, nay. No, it's on.
Point
It's
at your
on.
mouth.
Order that the bill be read a first time. For the first reading.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I now beg leave to move for the first reading of a bill for an act to provide for the continuation of the Civil Aviation Authority of the Bahamas as the Civil Aviation Authority Bahamas, its functions and composition and for matters connected thereto. If I may obtain a second.
Madam President, I rise to second. It has been moved and seconded that a bill for an act to provide for the continuation of the Civil Aviation Authority of the Bahamas as the Civil Aviation Authority Bahamas, its functions and composition and for matters connected thereto. As many as are in favor, aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Order that the bill be read at first time. For the first readings.
Thank you, Madam President. Beg leave to move for the first reading of a bill to establish a separate Bahamas Air Navigation Services Authority with its functions and composition. If I may obtain a second.
Madam President, I rise. Second. It has been moved and seconded that a bill to establish a separate Bahamas Air Navigation Services Authority with its functions and compositions. All those, as many as are in favor, aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Order that the bill be read a first time. Sorry. Thank you. Further first readings?
No further first reading.
Second reading and committal of bills. Committee of the whole, third reading and passing of bills, consideration of House amendments, resolutions, discharge.
Resolution, yes. Oh. You can find that since I didn't let that feature out. There's a resolution. I need a copy of the resolution of this. Thank you. Madam President, I beg leave to move the following resolution, which, upon its tabling on the 25th, I read in full, so I will exercise now the usual parliamentary standard of reading the first and last paragraphs. Thank you. Whereas pursuant to Article 29(1) of the Constitution, the Governor General may make a proclamation of emergency declaring that a state of public emergency for the purposes of that article exists in the Bahamas. Now, therefore, be it resolved that this House, A, approves the continuance of the proclamation of emergency made on the 24th day of November 2020 until the 23rd day of May 2021. B, affirms the continuance and effect of the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Risk Management Regulations 2020, made on the 24th day of November 2020 until the 23rd day of May 2021. C, affirms the continuance and effect of the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Risk Management Order 2020, made on the 24th day of November 2020 until the 23rd day of May 2021. And D, affirms the continuance and effect of the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Risk Management Special Provisions Order 2020, made on the 24th day of November 2020 until the 23rd day of May 2021. Madam President, I made a statement to the media 2 days ago, which was covered day before yesterday in the press, both papers, where I essentially outlined in my view, the justification for the continuance of the emergency orders. And that justification is buttressed by the case of Suraj, which I read the extracts from earlier today. It has been my position that this is the only way to have the maximum degree of legal certainty. And in a situation where there are restrictions of hitherto freely enjoyed rights, the right to go out any time of the night, come back, etc., by curfews or travel restrictions, you can't go to the island or you can't go to a particular island, that when you have this, the maximum amount of certainty of the legal efficacy of the mandate must be adhered to at all times. That you can't take chances and roll dice as to whether or not a law is effective, because people must know with certainty what is the law that governs their conduct at any one time. If there is any degree of uncertainty, then persons will naturally take advantage of the uncertainty and have a plausible reason to challenge the applicability of the law to preventing them from doing whatever they want to do. So the critical underlying policy has always been to strive for the maximum degree of certainty. And this is why I'm somewhat puzzled that it is reported in the press that the leader of the opposition stated that I, as Attorney General, had confirmed the following, quote, any new measures needed to keep the Bahamians safe can be enacted through ordinary legislation. He goes on to say, this government's own Attorney General has confirmed this. That statement is demonstrably false. And I'm sure that he would have made it by mistake, because it is clear on the record of this Senate, where I previously addressed this issue at the time of the last extension debate in November. And I stated clearly to the Bahamian people that yes, we had worked to create a new legal framework that would have been passed in Parliament. However, when we looked at the powers that were necessary under the emergency orders, and we looked at the case of Suraj that I have referred to, we realized that the powers required, such as the power of curfew, the power to limit travel, the power to prevent, to have island lockdowns, the power to generally lock down every non-essential business, were not powers that could be exercised under an enactment made in Parliament. I stated that in this place. It is a matter of public record, parliamentary record. At no time did I ever say that all of the powers that we need to fight this emergency are available and can be done under statute law. I specifically said the contrary. So I'm somewhat surprised that the leader of the opposition would have made what in my view is a demonstrably false assertion against me. He ought to have spoken to his senators, his fellow colleagues in here, who would know that my position on this was very clear, that we needed to continue the emergency regime in order to have all the tools necessary to fight this contagion. And events are proving us to have been correct. What do we see has happened since November? 2, not just 1, 2 new mutant strains of the virus. One in UK being up to 70% more contagious than the pre-existing virus. Now let's look at what happened this year, just to get a sense of how dangerous this is. You know that while coronavirus infections have continued to rise around the world, flu infections dropped. Ordinary influenza infections around the world plummeted this year. But coronavirus infections continue to rise worldwide. Why is that? Because the flu is less infectious, less transmissible, and even then, the flu, you get that being in the same room with somebody without any protective facial coverings, etc. But because of the protective measures such as sanitization and face covering, flu infections plummeted last year over the Christmas. It comes out in the winter usually. So they tell you get your inoculation around October to get yourself straight for the winter. Flu infections dropped. Coronavirus infections with the pre-existing virus have continued to rise. And what has happened since November? All of a sudden we heard, coming into late December, beginning of January, new variants, they said first. Now they say mutant variations, mutations. In London, it was the first one that was found, but almost within a day or so, they spoke about a second mutant strain in South Africa. The United Kingdom government, as of a statement yesterday, said that in their view, the new strain is up to 70% more contagious than the original coronavirus infection, 70%, and is possibly going to be more virulent. Meaning more deadly in its impact. But what is worse, the South African strain, which I think has made its way to Brazil, is even more threatening. The South African strain, they say, has the potential not to be recognized by the vaccine. That hasn't been established yet. But it has the potential because there are significant differences in certain areas that doctors would know about. And I'm not a doctor. But I know this, that there are twin threats coming. So you have not just the original coronavirus, but two new highly contagious strains, one of which may be more deadly and the other of which may evade the vaccine. We cannot afford to let our guard down. We did not know that this would happen in November. We just simply made a statement that the government had to preserve. I made it. My colleagues shared in the comments that the government had to preserve every weapon in its arsenal to deal with the foreseen challenges and the unforeseen challenges. And today we face the unforeseen challenges. Challenges we did not know about in November. The last thing I want to say is this. We are now in a race against the virus and its mutations to hurry up and get our people vaccinated. vaccinated. No, you see, because the point is, if vaccinated, and if the vaccination program can be expanded to more and more countries around the world, instead of the rich countries hogging up every available ampule of vaccine right now, if there could be a more equitable distribution, it would prevent people, and there's where infection can becoming infected. Because every new person who is infected has the potential to have something in their body which provokes some further mutation in this virus. The whole point is this virus has been passing from person to person to person to person to person. And there's nothing to suggest that it can change itself just by being out in the air. however long, or on some surface. Okay? Obviously, the changes are occurring because of something happening in somebody, which provokes some change. That's only my speculation. I'm not a doctor. But all I know is it can't survive for long outside of a human host. It moves from host to host. It may well move from humans to animals or back to humans. I don't know. There are all sorts of things we do not know about this virus. It is largely accepted that it was transmitted from an animal to human. But whether there can be back and forward and everything else, we don't know. The longer the bulk of humanity is not vaccinated, there are going to be continual opportunities for this virus to mutate and possibly to become even more contagious, even more virulent, meaning that it will kill more people. So the critical race now is to obtain vaccines and to vaccinate as many Bahamians as possible. Pending that, we will not drop our guard. We cannot drop our guard. We made that error once in July of 2020, and we paid dearly for it. Dearly for it. We will not drop our guard again until we have reached the level of vaccination of Bahamians and residents. And when I say residents, I mean all populations in the Bahamas. All, without discrimination or recrimination, all populations. And when we reach that level, yes, we will ask the Governor General, please consider whether you think, sir, that it's okay to let the emergency orders go. Because it is his discretion. People like say, oh, the Governor General could say it any day, I ain't signing that no more, I think everything is good. Yes, he can. Because it is a matter in his own deliberate judgment. If you read Article 29, it don't say the Governor General on advice of the Prime Minister. It says if the Governor General perceives, words to that effect, that there's an emergency. He, in his own deliberate judgment, not in consultation with no PM, not at the request of any Prime Minister. It is the Governor General's prerogative. So all we could do is ask, well, Governor, it looks like we got 80% of the Bahamian people vaccinated. Looks like things are okay. Would you consider, what are your instructions? What are your instructions? That's how it works. What are your instructions? So with those notes, Madam President, I want to assure the Bahamian people that the protection of their lives is the first and paramount concern of the competent authority, the cabinet that assists and advises him, the medical health services that advise him, and in fact, often dictate terms in terms of what is needed, because they have to have their say. Our paramount concern is to protect and defend the lives of Bahamians, to protect and defend the health care system of the Bahamas, because Bahamians need to have safe and accessible healthcare services, not just for treatment of the coronavirus, but for all of the comorbidities that afflict so many of us. Heart trouble, hypertension, diabetes, cancer, man, that's right. Whatever we did, the ague or something used to call it in the old days. Yeah. Ague, whatever. Yeah. The point is that the preservation of life in the face of this pandemic is the first concern of the government. The preservation of the health system, which is necessary also to preserve, broadly speaking, the lives of every Bahamian, particularly those with comorbidities, is the second concern. When we reach that point, we will happily beg the Governor General to remove the emergency regime. But until that point is reached, we will err on the side of caution and certainty as to the efficacy of the laws. That being said, we trust and pray that this won't have to go on much longer. We all would like to reach that point where there is a sufficient level of vaccinations throughout this country where we can return to normal. We all want that. There's not a single one of us that doesn't sit around and say, oh Lord, how long is this going to go on for? Oh Lord, how long? Okay, so on that note, Madam President, I commend the resolution to colleagues, and I so move. Thank you.
Chair,
I have to go on a Zoom meeting, so excuse me for a while. Let me just try to use my phone.
the chair recognizes Senator Dwight Sawyer, former minister.
Madam President, once again, I'm grateful. Thank you. Morning once again. Madam President and fellow senators, once again, I am grateful for this opportunity to stand in this honorable place once more time. By God's grace, and I give him thanks for making it possible for me to be here another day. But before I begin my contribution, I just want to convey my sincerest condolences to the family of the late Miss Selma Dean, who is being funeralized this morning as we speak. She was a veteran educator who has left her footprints in the sand and it has impacted the life of so many Bahamians. Madam President, I have known Miss Selma Dean for a very long time. But more importantly, for the last 10 to 15 years, we had a close working relationship, and more specifically during the last election campaign, where she worked as a fantastic political warrior for us. She gave up her time and her resources and efforts unselfishly. She is a very important and essential member of our election coordinating team. And she always remained focused and make sure that we stayed focused on our assignments during the last election campaign. And as a result of that, after we won the election in 2017, and of course, because of all the work she has done for our party, we bestowed on her the highest recognition that our party could give as a meritorious council member. And for that, we are eternally grateful for the services that she had given to the party. And I know many of our colleagues will miss her during the next election campaign. She was steadfast, dedicated, political warrior for our party. And on that note, Madam President, may her soul rest in peace and rise in glory. Madam President, a little more, over 2 months ago, we met in this place to give the extension to the emergency order to COVID-19 2020. It was to be until the end of January 2021, with a review of the status to be taken at this time. So much has happened since we last met in this place, and we are hopeful for brighter days. The pandemic has not gone away. As a matter of fact, it has mutated into a more contagious strain, and we must not let our guard down if we are to prevent a third surge in our country. When we look at this surge and the effect it is having on countries around the world, we must appreciate the efforts of this government's actions based on the advice and the scientific advice of very knowledgeable medical team and advisors. We, unlike other places, we are following the science. Madam President, the European countries have implemented new lockdowns and curfew measures over the recent holidays. in an effort to flatten their curve. Our neighbors in the Turks and Caicos and Barbados, and just recently Barbados and other countries in this region have found it necessary to also implement much more and more new stringent restrictions, curfews, as they face this new strain. Madam President, we have seen a decline in our numbers. There's still a lot of work to do. We know that some persons are restless and are taking matters into their own hands by breaking or breaching the emergency orders. We have seen this in recent weeks in various forms as people attended funerals and other such events in mass numbers contrary to the restrictions. We must exercise sound judgment and accountability in our actions. We must remain ever vigilant in this fight. Madam President, the progress has been made with the vaccine and is now being administered onto frontline workers and seniors and other more vulnerable persons in many countries. Although the vaccine is available even in the US and America now, it finds it necessary to implement more stringent curfews, restrictions, and measures to protect its citizens from the surge. This global war continues, and the old adage that an ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure holds true right now. We must ensure that measures are in place in the event it becomes necessary to enforce them. And that is why this resolution to extend the orders is our preventive action. While we await the vaccine, we must continue to exercise caution and adhere to safety protocols. We must exercise personal accountability and responsibility. This administration has done a great job in its efforts to flatten the curve and keep its citizens safe. And this is no time to relax our guard. Like the Attorney General just said recently, we must not relax our guard. I commend the Prime Minister and the Minister of Health and his team and all the frontline and essential workers for their tireless and unvarying service to the people of this country. I commend the many volunteers who continue to feed and assist the underprivileged and disenfranchised. COVID-19 has changed the world and the way we live and do business in it. It will be with us for some time. We must adapt. We must cope. We must accept this new normal. We must work together. We must be willing to sacrifice some of today's movements for tomorrow's freedoms. We can do it. We must do it. Tough times, like someone said a while ago, some tough times don't last, but tough people will survive. We began to gradually open our country and rebuild our economy. We must not lose focus of this, and we must do everything to stay on this path. This is no time for party colors or political divides. We should remain a unified nation as we battle this enemy. Our health officials have advised the Most Honorable Prime Minister that based on the current trend, we are headed in the right direction. And so a resolution to extend this emergency orders 2019-20 to May 23, 2020 has been made in the other place. And based on all the facts that are before us, Madam President, it gives me great pleasure to second this resolution. I encourage each and every one to follow the protocols of washing their hands, wearing the mask, social distancing, and avoid very large crowds. And I wish all Bahamians to remain safe. May God bless us all, and may God continue to bless the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Madam President, I so second this resolution. Thank you very much.
Pursuant to Article 29(1) of the Constitution, the Governor General may make a proclamation of emergency declaring that a state of public emergency for the purposes of that article exists in the Bahamas. And whereas on the 17th day of March 2020, a proclamation of emergency was made by the Governor General declaring that a state of public emergency existed in the Bahamas, and this proclamation expired on the 29th day of June 2020. Now therefore be it resolved that these chambers approve the continuance of the proclamation of emergency made on the 24th day of November 2020 until the 23rd day of May 2021, affirms the continuance in effect of the emergency powers COVID-19 pandemic, Risk Management Regulations 2020, made on the 24th day of November 2020 until the 23rd day of May 2021, affirms the continuance in effect of the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Risk Management Order 2020, made on the 24th day of November 2020 until the 23rd day of May 2021, and affirms the continuance in effect of the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Risk Management Special Provisions Order 2020, made on the 24th day of November 2020 until the 23rd day of May 2021. As many, the chair recognizes Senator Dartmouth.
Thank you so much, Madam President. While I was waiting for you to finish reading the resolution, I had a side discussion with the Minister for Grand Bond and Minister of Finance.
You had a sad discussion in the middle of my
Well, it was not to be disrespectful to you, but it was associated with something I saw in the newspaper with the Grand Bahama Port Authority investing some $5 million in a reverse osmosis plant after 1 year post-Hurricane Dorian, after all the residents of Freeport plumbing fixtures have been rotten, and there has been no talk about how to get these replaced. While they were actually selling brackish water to the residents of Grand Bahama, we are all pleased that this private entity, who has the responsibility to ensure that potable water is available to the city of Freeport and by extension, some parts of West and East Grand Bahama, we're pleased to learn that a reverse osmosis plant, if I'm not mistaken, is already being constructed in the city of Freeport, and we look forward for that to happen ASAP. Secondly, as the Attorney General was speaking, I'm always pleased to hear him speak because he has some medical knowledge. And me and you, as professionals in the healthcare profession, I think we should grandfather him into the profession with a subspecialty of immunology, because he seems to be able to move around pretty well. And that's not being facetious. He has some knowledge in the field. And lastly, with your leave, Madam President, I would like to join my colleagues in extending my deepest sympathy to the family of Valentino Obinia on his recent passing as a direct result of COVID-19. We are both blessed with special children, and me and Valentino develop a very strong bond because me and Valentino did our very best to ensure that the life of our children is to a point that is close to normal. But that bond grew when he lost his special daughter, the love of his life. And so as I came in today, I have that opportunity to look right at him, facing me with the camera in front of me, and see that smile. And on behalf of all of us on this side, we extend condolences to his family, and by extension, all the 175 individuals, or 74 families who lost their loved ones as a direct result of COVID-19. May their souls and the souls of the dearly departed rest in peace. Madam President, yesterday I listened very carefully, and I want to take my time today to the Prime Minister's communication in the lower house as he attempted to outline his rationale for the extension of the COVID-19 emergency powers to May the 23rd, 2021.
April.
May. Yes, it's May. Sorry. I must admit that I was deeply concerned with his senseless political attacks on our leader, as he attempted to accuse the official opposition for playing politics. And this really affected me in the midst of such a serious pandemic. He went on to suggest that any member of parliament, and this is what really is still working in me, who refused to support the extension of these emergency powers, lack concern for the well-being of the Bahamian people. This statement is reckless, as far as I'm concerned, and once again proves that the Prime Minister is using fear-mongering tactics to gain political leverage. This is my opinion. I have a right to mine. You will be able to voice yours. Like the Prime Minister, I too am a practicing physician, sworn by the Hippocratic Oath. And throughout this pandemic, use my medical training to make sound evidence-based recommendations to government as suggested by the competent authority, because he said, give us recommendations. And I did it through the Progressive Liberal Party's task force, along with other qualified medical professionals. So you see, Madam President, medical professionals could have different points of view, and we all train practically in the same way. Yes, the Progressive Liberal Party's COVID-19 task force was put in place by the leadership of our party with a primary focus of providing guidance and sound evidence-based recommendations to support the government efforts in the fight against this deadly virus. And yes, Madam President, the PLP task force have and will continue to highlight the competent authorities' missteps. But let me make it clear, because the Prime Minister said something downstairs that is of great concern. But I want to make it clear at this point that at no particular time our task force was designed or used by the leadership of our party to compete or undermine the work at the Ministry of Health, but was created to facilitate a bipartisan response to effective management of the deadly virus. So I disagree with the Prime Minister. Our task force was absolutely necessary after our leader went to create the bipartisan relationship with the Prime Minister and was pushed aside. I wonder if many could remember when they said that Brave cannot say nothing to the Prime Minister, cannot advise him. You remember that?
I don't listen to Brave.
I don't listen to Brave. But we went in good faith. And at that time, the Minister of Health was Dr. Sands, in good faith to develop this bipartisan relationship, and we were cast aside like wayward soldiers. Madam President, we consider the request for an extension of these sweeping emergency powers as a big mistake. And as Shadow Minister of Health and a COVID-19 survivor, thank God I'm here, because Valentino didn't make it. It is good to see that after a very difficult second wave, our COVID numbers are gradually trending down, despite the multitude of challenges in our healthcare system, and notwithstanding the critical errors made by the competent authority. Madam President, the science guides us. Mask wearing, social distancing, hand sanitizing protocols throughout our country, coupled with stringent international and local travel protocols during the fall and winter last year, have over time made an impact on our COVID numbers. But I must warn the government that the reduction in these numbers can give us a false sense of comfort regarding our ability to deal with the potential third wave, since deficiencies that exist in our healthcare delivery system have not been adequately addressed. Further, as reported recently, we have also not demonstrated a capacity to effectively monitor and manage the protocols put in place by the Ministry of Tourism to prevent community spread from infected tourists who arrive to our shore, as well as returning residents. So you see, Madam President, this morning, against this backdrop, I rise one more time in this honorable place to make my contribution to the proclamation before us for a resolution to extend COVID-19 emergency powers for a further 4 months, this time until May the 23rd, 2021. Madam President, the last time we met in this honorable place, we on this side did not support the previous 60-day extension for COVID-19 emergency orders. And many in our country agree with the position that we took. It was 10 months ago, almost to this day, when we passed the first emergency orders. In March 2020, we, the official opposition, stood with the government in supporting this move because we sincerely believe that these powers would have given the government the necessary tool to manage this deadly pandemic. We believed at that time that these COVID-19 emergency orders would allow the government the necessary space to formulate strategic plans for our healthcare sector and also the necessary leverage for them to make legislative adjustments to facilitate the orderly management of our country's affairs around this deadly pandemic. But we were wrong. We were wrong. After 10 months, we have yet to see one strategic plan or legislative adjustment presented to this Parliament. But instead, we see the government using these powers to issue impulsive changes to processes and protocols related to the management of this pandemic. A protocol implemented today is changed tomorrow without apology or clarity by the government. Hey, we in charge. This is what we do, so shut your mouth and go in the corner. Changes came so frequently, some within days of each other, that we all became confused, even me who reading the changes. Come say, come sa. Over these 10 months, we saw the government itself breaking many of the rules that they themselves had implemented. Asked former Minister of Health, the Honorable Dwayne Sands, who, unlike many of the colleagues who were responsible for that deal, resigned because of failure to comply with rules laid down by them. Bahamian people witnessed meetings and photo opportunities and blatantly went against the state of the protocols. The competent authorities failed to table reports as required in their own COVID-19 regulations. Travel around the country without regard to the stringent quarantine requirements by the Prime Minister, accompanied by non-government officials, while we in the opposition kept fighting for the same benefits. We finally got some of them, thank God. So, as these 10 months of emergency powers wore on, we on this side thought it important to stand up for civil liberties for the Bahamian people and demand transparency and accountability from this government on their behalf. So we have voted against the successive extensions of these powers in an effort to bring the attention of these issues of accountability and transparency to the Bahamian people. Madam President, I remember as a young boy, I saw my mother a couple days ago. She don't know me anymore because of Alzheimer's, but what a great woman. My mother, when all else failed, would threaten me that she'll bring the boogeyman. And she would bring the boogeyman if she wanted me to fall in line or behave in a certain way. Sad to say, Madam President, these emergency orders, in my view, have become the Bahamian boogeyman. The government, in my opinion, has used these powers to cover over the deficiencies in their governance. I've seen it. I've watched it. It is being used, in my opinion, for crime fighting, despite what the Minister of National Security tried to convince us of. These emergency powers are being used to give the free national movement, and this is my opinion, and a lot of people believe it, the upper hand for political campaigning. To curry favor. To curry favor with certain sectors of the economy, and to hold all and sundry at bay by using it to say that anyone else who goes against these extensions goes against the fight of COVID-19. What a bunch of hogwash. But the devil is a liar, Madam President. He's a devil is a liar. And during my movement from place to place and speaking to Bahamians, we can see straight through this damn smoke screen put on by this administration. You coming in my car, boy, you got to remember that me and Mr. Folks from there, behave yourself. And what is so shameless about this government is they have been bold to accept praises. My God. All of them downstairs patting themselves on the back, a job well done. It's obviously that they are unfamiliar with what is luring behind closed doors. But they have forgotten that these same emergency orders, under their watch, we saw COVID cases spiral out of control to place us at the bottom of the international list for the management of the pandemic just a few months ago. So, a couple months ago, you ranked 184th out of 184. You don't want to talk about that. Well, no problem. Madam President, we must remember that these same emergency powers were put in place when the daily numbers of new COVID cases soar to almost 200 persons a day. When the numbers swelled from 104 persons in the first wave at the beginning of July 2020 to 4,123 2 short months later, when we saw in our country 175 deaths, the highest in the region. So we must be truthful, Madam President. We must be measured and truthful when we are governing. And we must do it on behalf of the Bahamian people. The truth of the matter is that following 3 simple instructions, and this is what the science is coming right back to. And these 3 instructions have been the catalyst to slowing the growth of new cases in our country and other countries around the world. Bahamian people must be given credit where credit is due for these improvements, and not the incompetent authority. It is the Bahamian people who wash their hands, who try to stay as far as they come from there 6 feet apart, and for wearing their masks. They are the heroes in this battle, and not the incompetent authority. Science have proven that consistent mask wearing, social distancing, and hand sanitizing, and all and sundry, and the compliance of businesses. Yes, many businesses in this country have lost clients because they are adhered to the rules and regulations while the clients are outside complaining and bickering. They stuck to their guards, and they need to be commended. Not penalized, but commended, because at the great expense, customers are outside complaining and you are adhering to the rules and regulations. Madam President, the slowing of the spread has always been aided by the closing of our borders, particularly in the latter half part of this year. Let us then call this request for an extension of the emergency powers what it really is.
What is it?
The abuse of civil liberties for every Bahamian, and it is disguised as COVID management. But I caution this F&M administration. You can fool some of the people some of the times, but not all the people all the time. In my view, the competent authority in this administration has failed to properly prepare our healthcare system to fight this virus and these new highly contagious mutated strains originating in the UK and South Africa. And our Attorney General, who we just grandfathered into our profession, spoke specifically about the UK and South African strains, spoke about their virulence, and he spoke about how contagious they are, and there are studies to prove that the cloth mask may not be effective with these particular strains. Madam President, the failure to prepare was highlighted a few weeks ago, and this is the government dropping the ball again. It was highlighted in Abaco, healthcare workers, when they demonstrated on one of the hardest hit communities for the lack of essential healthcare supplies and the failure of the Ministry of Health to repair and do maintenance. Just simple maintenance they can't do. And they up here talking about all these fancy stuff, not doing what they're supposed to do on the ground, and quick to activate a blunt instrument that destroy lives and livelihoods. Madam President, what we need is action and less political rhetoric coming from the Ministry of Health at this time. Madam President, yesterday I received a call it rhetoric because the people calling us. I received a call from one of the clinics in the Southern District that confirmed what we believe all along, despite the Minister of Health reassurance, that more must be done to protect the residents there and the safety of the residents from COVID-19. And I thank God these are very sparsely populated areas. So the interaction is very limited, and as a direct result, the possibility of spread is low. I was in Freeport a few days ago and spoke with a few healthcare workers there and have confirmed that the healthcare system is still severely challenged. And much work must be done to alleviate the burden on an already overworked and underpaid healthcare team, who I believe right now is at the Prime Minister's office begging for the money that they deserve or what they work for. Minister, if you would go there now, I'll take my seat. We are serious about healthcare on this side. And if this government is serious about healthcare on that side, then stop giving lip service. We're tired of it. Because what you say don't add up on the ground about COVID readiness throughout our country. It's all talk. I am one of those who are fortunate to move about. And I listen. I listen very carefully to what our healthcare professionals are saying behind the scene, afraid to be victimized. Much as what is being said in the other place is not lining up with what we're seeing on the ground, and it needs to be fixed. Madam President, over the last few days, we've had the opportunity to speak to healthcare workers throughout the country. And despite what the Ministry of Health keep reassuring us, the following things keep popping up. Pop, pop, pop. Shortage of medical supplies. Why? In the midst of a pandemic. Difficulty to find adequate PPPs in our family islands. The lack of COVID testing is still a real challenge. And I think Dr. Sands spoke about it in the other place. A very competent physician. And he, like myself, we read extensively of what's happening around the world, and we try to bring the technology and this knowledge to our country. But we have to do it from the platform where I stand, because we reach out to the government to display bipartisanship and was pushed aside. Stop talking from one side of the mouth and doing something from the other side of the mouth. It's disingenuous. We haven't challenged us to monitor COVID isolation cases. There's confusion at the COVID-19 call centers. There's ineffective protocols, and contact tracing needs to be beefed up. Little or no public education programs about COVID-19 vaccine, and we hear it's going to be rolled out probably the end of next month. Is no small wonder that our deaths from COVID-19 is the highest in the region, despite the heroic efforts from doctors and healthcare workers on the front line. I am a fortunate individual to stand here today with the medical complications I had from COVID-19. And I'm grateful to the medical staff and doctors. One day, I may be in a position to speak specifically about them and the great work they have done, but that will be held for another time. So again, we on this side are asking, is the public interest served by the current government COVID-19 structure? Are the interests of Bahamian citizens who elected this government served by these emergency orders? And is the competent authority acting as judge and jury and quick to become agitated when you have constructive criticism? Constructive criticism make your policies better. Finally, Madam President, is the decisions affecting lives and livelihoods. This is the reality of where we are. People are hurting because of this blunt instrument. We know the science. We know exactly what are the indication to use the blunt instrument, but you need to be a little bit more innovative. The possibility of a third wave is a real threat to our country, and this wave threatens to be even more contagious, virulent, as outlined by the Attorney General. It is important, therefore, that we do everything possible now, not when it's on, to ensure that we have the structures in place to manage and contain any further outbreak from these deadly virulent strains. The recent failure, and you know, everyone will push it under the rug, but we have to bring it up. The recent failure in managing the health protocols put in place by the Ministry of Tourism resulted in 21,000, not 21 people, 21,000 persons not being retested after arriving to our shore. Someone need to get the tumbling switch. we must, Madam President, we must put strong checks and balances in the enforcement of these protocols, not lip service, not jumping in front of the camera and talking about how good things are. And then your staff calls us grumbling, stating that nothing's in place. The days of the camera show is over. This is a pandemic. Madam President, follow the international trends. We on this side understand the short-term benefits of lockdown and curfews. We're not stupid. We know the rules. We know what the Harvard Epidemiological Review says, when to implement and when to remove. We know. But we must move away from these harsh measures that are destroying small businesses. Thousands of jobs. And look carefully at the countries who have success stories in trying to save their economy. I would hazard to guess that the 10 months of emergency powers that have been enforced, plus the additional 4 months, which makes it 14 months after it comes to the end, is probably the longest in any country history in the region, and I would even go as far as to say internationally. 14 months. 14 months of emergency orders, and want to continue. Madam President, even with the new vaccines, COVID-19 will be around well past the end of the current extension of these emergency powers. Dr. Stephen Hogg, president of Moderna, earlier yesterday made a statement that the fight against COVID will continue for the next couple of years. Based on the government's position and posture of managing this pandemic for lockdowns and curfews, are we therefore to expect that this approach will continue until the pandemic goes away? Madam President, the real victory and success in fighting this virus will come by formulating legislation to improve public health and vaccine protocols that we can all buy into. Studies of human behavior have long documented that negative implications of restrictions to social liberties are reflected in the emergency powers bestowed upon this administration. But nothing is being said about public health reform. And the competent authority instead focuses on tightening the grip of civil liberties. I say to the competent authority and its cabinet, you have not been proactive. In your approach to managing the pandemic, it focuses heavily on short-term benefits of the draconian measures of lockdown and curfews. That is unsustainable. You need to get that in your head. It's unsustainable because you will put them in place and you will drive your country into gross poverty. Madam President, the government's stewardship in finding the right balance between commerce, lockdown, and curfews and the welfare of our citizens have fallen short of our expectation and demonstrate the lack of depth and skill to manage the affairs of this country. I say that with no remorse. The question needs to be asked, what is the government's social reform agenda for low-income families and the unemployed, other than the basic food assistance? And people are grateful because they're getting corned beef and tuna, a lot of canned goods. Sure, the Minister of Health knows the devastating effects of it, but you know, in these kind of times, if you ain't got nothing decent to eat, you got to take with what you could get. But this is not the solution. It's only to help us through. Madam President, there are few, if any, persons in this country who doesn't know if anyone who have contacted this deadly virus or persons who have died from complications of this virus. The government and the Ministry of Health have spoken about the purchase of COVID-19 vaccines and hinted that cold storage equipment, is on the way, with the possibility of a vaccination program rolled out by the end of next month. The public needs to know the details and the dates, not just hints. And I was pleased that the Minister of Health indicated that the vaccine committee will be making some announcement later this week or next week, if I'm not wrong, and the fact that the vaccines would be free and voluntary. That is good news. That is good news. And it falls in line with the recommendations we made from our task force and what is happening worldwide. Madam President, we in the Progressive Liberal Party, who have the medical training, have read the medical literatures and peer reviews of the current vaccines available, and like every country in the world, we on this side support a robust voluntary vaccination program, protecting the most vulnerable in our communities first. And I'm waiting patiently to find out exactly what the committee would recommend, because I learned that representatives from the Medical Council wrote the Prime Minister speaking specifically about how the committee was structured, because there was not a lot of medical manpower on the committee, and I'm sure that must be worked out. And I'm glad to see that finally they are reaching out to the Bahamas Medical Council, where hundreds of physicians are connected. And there was a Zoom meeting with one of the representatives from the task force, the government's task force, on there, and I heard it was very successful. Kudos to her, and it is a step in the right direction. But I must point out to the competent authority that a well-thought-out vaccination program is but one part of our COVID management strategy. And once again, we ask the competent authority to lay his plan. He said in the other place, scotch out the word plan. We're waiting on a plan because he has never spoken about a plan. Table it so we could see it. Tell us how he intends to reduce community spread without using these draconian measures. Madam President, transparency on behalf of the government must be the order of the day in our fight against this deadly virus if we intend to win. This was not demonstrated in the last 60 days extension because many healthcare workers still don't find full access to personal protective equipment, and they remain in the dark and distant from the majority of policy decisions that are being made that affect them. Other than the periodic press conference by the Minister of Health and the Prime Minister, no one really knows what is happening in our clinics, our ports of entry, and why certain sectors of our economy are open without epidemiological evidence to support the Competence Authority decision to do so. We on this side cannot, and I say it again, you could bring your divide. We cannot support the decision to extend emergency orders without adjustments to the current policies, protocols, and without clearly articulated workable plan for the next 120 days. The PLP will continue to reach out to the government to provide recommendation and perspectives of managing this deadly pandemic. We stand by our 10-point plan that can be accessed online at covidactionplan.org to review and to give us comments. And we believe it fits well with the archipelagic nature of our country. Once again, we are saying to the government that we on this side stand ready. But while we wait, we will not be idle and will continue to do our part as a political organization in this critical fight to save lives and to jumpstart our economy. Madam President, there's no question that all of our healthcare workers and those in the front line are doing their part. The nurses are doing their part. You owe them money, pay them their money so that they can pay their bills. and all should be commended, but we reiterate our early request for the government must ensure that our nurses and doctors are at the table during the decision-making process as it relates to this pandemic. We are all in this fight together, opposition and government. And the government must move away from these draconian measures and develop long-term strategies by thinking outside of the box to ensure not only the health but the economic welfare of our citizens is paramount and placed first. The government has had 10 months to present those strategies, but failed to do so. With the extension of these emergency powers through May the 23rd, 2021, the civil liberties of the Bahamian people would be affected and would have been curtailed for 14 months. We on this side say this is madness. We must wake up and demand proper governance. Once again, like my colleagues in the other place, in good conscience, I cannot support the 120-day extension of these emergency powers because it gives the government a free pass not to report to this parliament. And finally, Madam President, as I take my seat, I would like to wish the entire country a happy and prosperous new year. Be safe, exercise the 3 protocols that have been proven to be effective in reducing the person-to-person transmission, and may God bless us all.
Sorry, my mic wasn't on. Chair recognizes Senator Thompson.
Madam President, thank you. And I do also want to thank my sister Senator Lisa for just allowing me to proceed. Madam President, I sat and listened painfully through most of Senator Darville's presentation. It was disappointing, and I think sad that the Progressive Liberal Party would decide to delve so politically low. Would delve so politically low at such a critical time as this. And you know, Madam President, there was just so many inconsistencies. And if you could allow me, I just have to address a couple of them before I get into my substantive presentation. But on the one hand, they will shout from the mountaintop and say that a third wave could be coming. That, in fact, he said, we have to do everything possible now to protect ourselves from a third wave. But you know, Madam President, I agree with him 100%. But he is not doing what he has called upon us to do. We are right now, today, voting to do everything possible to protect the people from a third wave
and they are voting against it.
Madam President. Madam President.
We are, Madam President, without question, putting in place measures to protect the people, to protect our Bahamian economy, and to ensure that we keep our numbers low. But, Madam President, actions speak louder than words. And today, the only people who are doing something right now to protect and put in place measures to protect the Bahamians and to protect the Bahamas and protect our economy is those who are voting for this resolution. I don't mind what you say. I don't mind how much you shout. I don't mind how much you criticize. Actions speak louder than words. And today, we are voting to protect the lives of our people. That's what we're doing today. So you could say what you like. You could say it as loud as you like. You could talk about what we ain't doing and how bad things are. It's true. But the reality is, you have an opportunity today. You have an opportunity today to do something about it. You have an opportunity today to ensure that we protect the Bahamian people. We have an opportunity today to show the Bahamian people, not just talk about it, but to actually show them.
Senators, I understand that there are differences of opinion on both sides of the table. Okay? There is no reason for us to be trying to overshout each other. And that goes for you too, Dr. Dava. Okay, while one senator, please, we have different political opinions, but we're all hopefully respectful adults. So let's give each individual an opportunity to do their presentation. And I think, Dr. Dava, you got above and beyond respect when you were presenting.
I do respect the minister very highly.
Okay, well then show it. Let's demonstrate it.
My friend.
Okay.
Madam President, thank you. Thank you for coming to my rescue. I believe one of the smallest ones in the Senate. So I thank you for coming to protect me. But Madam President, Senator Dowell also said a couple other things that I just felt compelled to address. And one of the things that he said was, we must follow the international trends. Well, I agree with him. We should again follow the international trends. But Madam President, what are the international trends? In the UK, they're locking down. Countries throughout Europe have been locking down. Our neighbor, Caribbean neighbor, Barbados, just recently put in place a lockdown. Our big brother to the United States, they are putting in place extra protocols. Canada, lockdowns. So, Madam President, you say one thing. You say follow the international trends. Well, I'm going to put it back on them. Well, then follow the international trends and vote for this resolution. Because that's exactly what other countries are doing to protect their citizens. Madam President, he also said, that this must be the longest time that countries are going down or having emergency powers. Well, Madam President, countries today are not just continuing their emergency powers, but they are actually executing the emergency powers with their lockdowns. They're continuing that today. So, Madam President, I invite them. Just turn on the TV. Just look at the internet. See exactly what is happening across the world and what is being done. And Madam President, one other thing that just absolutely they completely ignore. They will criticize the government. They will say any manner of things against the government and say how we didn't do this and say how we didn't do that and say how bad things are and say this and that and the other thing against the government. But what they cannot deny, that our numbers are low. They cannot deny it. They cannot deny that the measures that have been put in place, Madam President, they cannot deny that the measures that have been put in place have worked. The measures that have been put in place have worked. On every single occasion where there was a rise in our numbers, and on every single occasion when we used the emergency powers, the numbers came down. We were successful in bringing the numbers down, Madam President. So why in the world, if you say you want to protect us from a third wave, why in the world would you take away the very thing that is needed to protect us? It makes absolutely no sense, but you know what? It makes sense. You know why it makes sense? Because they are concentrated on politics. And if all you say and all you speak has a political motive, well, that's what you're going to get. But Madam President, we don't have time to be focused on political things. The reality is we have to do this to save lives. The reality is we are still at risk. We are still at a very vulnerable place. We must prepare for a third possible wave. And the way that we do that, Madam President, is to do exactly what we are doing today and vote for this resolution. Madam President, let me begin my prepared text by extending appreciation. And this was something that they said we don't do. So I'm going to start with doing it today. Let me begin by extending appreciation to the people of the Bahamas for their compliance protocols, which have led to the Bahamas maintaining low numbers. Madam President, we all agree that our numbers have been managed because of the actions of our people. And we thank them and appreciate them for it. We should thank the public. And Madam President, I'm married to a nurse. And I've watched the COVID task force in Grand Bahama and the National Emergency COVID team operate. They have provided the essential medical advice that has guided policymakers and the competent authority. And Madam President, I just want to stop just for a moment on that point, because they have to be extremely careful. They have to be extremely cautious, because when you begin to throw out all of these criticisms, Madam President, they are based on the advice of the same medical professionals that you commend so much. So we must be very careful, Madam President, when we start to throw out the insults about being reckless and changing the orders so quickly. Well, Madam President, unfortunately, that's how this virus causes you to react very quickly. And secondly, I want to commend the medical professionals for their advice that they have provided to the policymakers and to the competent authority. Madam President, doctors and nurses and all the hospital staff have worked under extreme circumstances to care for patients and manage our health care system. And Madam President, you will hear any manner of insults about the healthcare system and what's going on in the healthcare system. But Madam President, you look at countries all over the world in managing COVID-19, and all of them, no matter how impressive their healthcare system was, all of them have been challenged by COVID-19. All of them. And so, Madam President, I want to commend all of those health professionals who have managed this pandemic so well. We all owe them a debt of gratitude. And Madam President, our police officers and our defense force officers, and yes, the COVID ambassadors, and all of the essential workers have worked beyond, above and beyond, and continue to do their part to protect us. And sometimes they have to protect us from ourselves. So I encourage us to all pray for them. I encourage us also, Madam President, to pray for our Prime Minister, who has been called to lead this country in circumstances never experienced by any former Prime Minister. And yes, Madam President, other countries are managing COVID, but not any of those countries are managing COVID within months of the worst natural disaster to ever hit their country. And I want us to remember that for a second, that it is so easy to throw out criticisms when the heat is on you. It is so easy for you to go ahead and talk bad about this one and talk bad about that one, but you're not sitting in the seat and you're not managing the same crisis or have that kind of responsibility, Madam President. So, Madam President, I want to take a moment for us to thank God for the Prime Minister's leadership through our recovery and leadership throughout this COVID-19. And Madam President, we just give God thanks overall. I heard one of the members down in the House, and I could not agree with him more, to say, basically, we are where we are by the grace of God. The numbers we have is by the grace of God. Because you look at your neighbors and you see the challenges that they're facing, and Madam President, quite frankly, that could be us. Yeah. So we have to be extremely careful and cautious when we begin to talk about these things, and not flippant when we begin to talk about these things. Because but for the grace of God go I. Madam President, I just have a few simple points to make in favor of continuing our ability to put in place emergency orders as needed. And I say it that way. We're not putting in place any additional orders today, but we are putting in place the necessary or continuing the necessary power to do so if needed. So tomorrow, ain't nothing to change. But what we are doing is extending our ability to act and to react in case we have to. And Madam President, the medical professionals have been excellent in terms of their presenting their data and justifying why and when these orders need to be put in place. They've been able to show you the graphs, show you all of the data. They've been able to answer the questions by the press that if we reach a certain point, then we will have to put in place an order. So, Madam President, we want to make that point crystal clear today. And let us be clear that this is all that is happening today. There's no clamping down on civil liberties. I mean, that's absolute nonsense. Absolute nonsense. Because, Madam President, the same freedom you have today is the same freedom you're going to have tomorrow unless it is required for us to take additional action. And, Madam President, we need to have the ability to take additional action if required. Madam President.
President, she's on a point of order. Yes, ma'am. Would the senator not concede that
No,
under
I'm
these?
not going to yield. I'm not going to yield.
I'm not asking you to yield. I'm making a point of order on a statement which he just made, which is untrue as far as I can tell. And that is that the Constitution, under these provisions, suspends civil liberties. They do so now. So he cannot assert that that is not the case.
No. No.
Yes.
And he does not feel that you are correct in that we should proceed.
But civil liberties.
Madam President.
So, Senator Thompson, you may continue.
Thank you very much. And Madam President, this is again the point that we are being made, and the important point that has to be made is you are putting in place and continuing to put in place the ability to do certain things if required. That is what we are doing here today. Madam President, it cannot be denied.
Madam President, he cannot say. I rise on this point. He cannot assert that civil liberties have not been suspended under these orders, because they have.
Madam President.
One second.
Madam President, if I may. Civil liberties have not been suspended. There are certain restrictions that have been imposed for the purposes of protecting both the people who are subject to it and also others. Okay? There's no suspension of civil liberties. Every single last right guaranteed in the Constitution as fundamental human rights have not been suspended. There are restrictions only in the interest of public health. That does not amount to a suspension of civil liberties.
I cannot move around the country freely. I cannot do it.
You guys, you just need to take no, it is a restriction on your right.
No, sir.
You are able to move about the country once you take a COVID test. Yes, you can.
Hold on.
Yes, you can.
Sir, you just said
Nothing
it
prevents
is
you.
a
That is
restriction.
untrue. You've been
You
all
just
over
said
this
it.
country.
It is a restriction.
You are making false statements in this place.
No, I'm not making
And you are, sir.
It is a suspension of
But-
my right.
It is not. It is a
Mitchell,
restriction.
please take your seat until
It is a restriction.
the Senator Bethel is finished.
You know, you
Please
do not
take
have
your
the
seat.
absolute right to go around willy-nilly and infect other people.
I am saying that you have suspended my right to move around the country.
Okay.
freely.
That,
No, Madam President, that is a patently false statement, okay? It is a false statement because there is currently no, of course you can, but you have to take a COVID test before you do.
and the
You need, stop talking foolishness, sir. Stop talking it. He needs to take a COVID test.
no,
And they stopped him at the
He needs to take a COVID
Senator
test.
Mitchell, please. I think that when you are standing and speaking, everyone gives you the same right to stand and speak. Senator Bethel was on his feet responding. You cannot decide that you are now going to stand up and speak while he is speaking. The same rules apply. You are in a process of disagreement. He has explained the difference between a suspension and a restriction. And so, Senator Thompson, please continue.
Madam President, again, I thank you for coming to my rescue.
Jesus, man.
And unfortunately, Madam President, today
I am going to speak no matter what.
Please come to my rescue again, Madam President. I don't know what it is today, but you know, I don't know. Madam President, it cannot be denied that there is still a risk for further COVID spread. And I want to say that again. It cannot be denied that there is still a risk for further spread. So, Madam President, countries all around us are still in crisis mode. We must be the only country who is arguing that we must let our guard down. We must be the only country right now that is saying, man, forget that COVID stuff that's going on. I want to be free. But Madam President, there is no letting down of our guard. We are going to continue to press on to protect our people. Madam President, the timely and effective emergency power orders implemented by the government are at the core of our success. And whether they admit it or they don't admit it. And I believe privately they actually admit it. But whether they admit it or they don't admit it. Oh my goodness. Madam President, I could say I believe. So I mean, Madam President, at least Madam President, they don't want me to talk. You know, they don't want me to talk. And you know, but sometimes the truth hurts. It's the truth.
You screaming, not me.
You weren't there when your colleague was talking. Madam President, the timely and effective emergency power orders implemented by the government are at the core of our success. Simply put, they have worked. Madam President, our cases are low. Our hospitalizations are low. The infection rate is low. They have worked. Yes, they are uncomfortable. And we cannot gloss by this point. Because I think sometimes in our arguments back and forth, we unintentionally dismiss the difficulties of the emergency orders. And we must ensure we do not come across by doing that. And Madam President, it is important for us to acknowledge that these emergency orders are challenging. These emergency orders are difficult. They are things that cause problems for businesses. They are struggles. They are things that cause challenges for churches. And they are things that cause challenges for funerals and weddings. There are challenges with them. And we have to, whether we like it or not, we do have to concede that yes, it is painful. When I go to see my grandmother, I see her through the glass, the window. It's painful. You know, having to do a test every time you travel, that's painful. That's uncomfortable. Having to go through shutting down at 10 o'clock when you really want to continue to go on, that's painful for some people. I mean, I'm in my bed at 10 o'clock, but for some people, that's painful. But limiting the amount of people at a funeral, that's painful. I mean, that's challenging. So you do have to acknowledge that. And you do have to accept what people are saying with respect to that. But Madam President, at this time, in order to protect and save lives, putting in place the ability to do that is necessary. And it has worked. Madam President, let me also make this abundantly clear. Our economic recovery depends on how well we manage COVID. So we may play around, but unfortunately, we don't have the ability to be reckless when it comes to these emergency orders. We do not have the luxury of being reckless when it comes to this, because our complete economic recovery depends on how we manage COVID. Madam President, God help us if we have a third wave and the hotels close down and the borders have to close down. So, Madam President, if it means continuing these emergency orders to protect us from going down that road, then, Madam President, I am going to be one of the first to vote for this. The economy, Madam President, is slowly improving because we have been able to manage COVID. However, make no mistake about it, our progress could be reversed if we let our guard down and if we become slack about these things. So, Madam President, we must continue to press on the course that we are now. COVID, Madam President, has thrown the entire world into crisis. No country has been spared the fiscal toll, and it will take time, Madam President, for us to recover. COVID has caused a significant drop in the government's revenue during the past year. We have collected less VAT, less customs duty, and fewer fees. However, COVID has also caused us to pay out even more support to the economy, and most importantly, support to the people that we have ever paid out. But, Madam President, this is what you do. And so you again can talk again and be again, what I call laissez-faire about how you talk about these things. But, Madam President, there are real people who got real problems. And so, Madam President, we have, in difficult times, done what we could do to assist those persons who needed it most. Madam President, even the Bible tells you that where your treasure is, here is where your heart is. So, Madam President, you put your money and your resources in those things that you most care about. And I want to refer to, Madam President, just a few comments that was made by the IMF in their staff concluding statement, which really summarizes some of the key elements of their overall staff report. They said the pandemic has exacted a significant human, social, and economic toll on the Bahamas. They said the archipelago was just starting to recover. And this is from the international agency. And they acknowledge that we were just starting to recover from the severe damage caused by Hurricane Dorian in the fall of 2019. Madam President, they also said that the authorities mounted a rapid emergency response to support the economy. This isn't something that the FNM said. This isn't something that the Bahamians said. This is something that the international community who came, witnessed what was happening, and gave a non-political report and said the authorities, meaning the government, mounted a rapid emergency response to support the economy. But they go further. They also said They took timely measures to sustain public health, protect the most vulnerable, and cushion the impact of the pandemic on employment, including providing food assistance, doubling the duration of unemployment benefits, and we still continuing that, deferring tax payments for companies that retain at least 80% of their workforce, and extending loans to small and medium-sized enterprises. Madam President, they confirmed. This ain't something that we said, even though we said it, but they confirmed it, that our response was rapid and our response was timely. So I don't need to answer you. The IMF will answer. Madam President, also, they confirm other things, and I won't go through all of that because I don't have the amount of time to go through all of that. But you know, one thing I want to actually acknowledge was the work of the Attorney General. The work of the Attorney General, Madam President, in the anti-money laundering efforts. Madam President, even the IMF made a note in saying that the country has made good progress with respect to the work that the Attorney General's office and the Ministry of Finance have been doing with respect to fighting and getting off of these blacklists. Madam President, they also spoke about the work that is being done with the sand dollar, and including family islanders and those people who are unbanked. Again, this is not something we're saying. This is something that the international agency who came down and evaluated is talking about. So, Madam President, as I close, we must stay on course. We must stay on course. There is light at the end of that tunnel, but we must stay on course. Do not get distracted by the political rhetoric. We must stay on course. Do not worry about what is being said in the marketplace. We must stay on course. Madam President, I want to implore the doctors and the nurses and all of those who work in our hospitals, for our sake, stay on course. For the police and the Defense Force and the COVID ambassadors who are doing a tremendous job, I want you to stay on course. For the business community who we know has been struggling and who we know are doing their best to survive and thrive, we want to encourage the business community to stay on course. Madam President, our Prime Minister, who does get hit from every level and every direction. But we want our Prime Minister, and I believe that the people throughout this country want our Prime Minister to stay the course. I believe each one of them want him to succeed. I believe each one of them wants him to do the best for our country. Because if he does the best for our country, they will benefit from it. And even, Madam President, those who may vote against him, they still want him to succeed. They still want him to stay the course. Madam President, I went to somebody. I went to someone's house who, without a doubt, said to us that they're on another political side. But Madam President, they said, tell the Prime Minister to keep doing what he's doing. They said, tell the Prime Minister that we appreciate the fact that he is fighting to protect the people. So, Madam President, I want our Prime Minister to stay the course. And I want every citizen to stay the course. Because, Madam President, as my friend and brother, colleague said, that I don't believe that God has brought us this far to leave us, and that we have come this far by the grace of God and by faith, and we will continue to move forward by the grace of God and by faith. And so I want to encourage every single Bahamian and to leave a word of inspiration to every single Bahamian. Madam President, don't mind the loud talk and the fight and the back and forward. But Madam President, each one of us, I believe, want to encourage every Bahamian that's out there. Every Bahamian that's out there that's facing challenges. We want to inspire you and to encourage you that this will not last forever. But we on this side, they could speak for themselves. We on this side are doing all we can to ensure that we progress this nation. So, Madam President, as I said, for me, I am voting for this resolution because it's not about what we say, it is about what we do. And today, we are doing. Thank you, Madam President.
As many? The chair recognizes Senator Bostwick Dean.
Thank you, Madam President. And good afternoon, colleagues. Good afternoon, Bahamas.
Ain't got no money. Ain't got no money.
I first say I must thank God to be here, not only in this place, but to welcome in 2021. 2020 was a challenging year for everybody. There is no one that was spared the challenges by reason of the coronavirus and its impact on each one of us. Before making my contribution, I want to pause to express condolences to the families of Sir William, MCM Peggy Phillips, and Valentino Aubinier. I knew each of these persons personally. Sir William was the father of a close friend. I spent many an evening on their patio of their home after law school. I passed on the tequila. But many an evening on that back patio, talking with his sons, our mutual colleagues and friends, and Sir William would come out sometimes in the early morning dew and sit with us. And we would have discourse. At that time in our lives, in our 20s, we believed ourselves to be very intellectual, and we believed ourselves to have all the answers. And he would sit with us and laugh with us and challenge our thoughts before he retired for the evening. He was a gentleman. He was highly intelligent. His comments always gave us pause and left us with something to think about. He also opened my mind, and as I said, at that stage of life, I thought my mind was fully opened. I thought my parents had done a good job exposing me to the world. I came back with a good education, but he was the first Bahamian I ever heard say, you know, when I retire, I want to have a second home in France, a vineyard where I will bottle my own wine. I truly never heard a Bahamian dream like that and then say they were looking for such a property. I was actually astounded, and it opened my mind in another way that you always say it, but to see someone sitting with us who was aspiring to it and who felt he could go do that. Not that he was going to move there, mind you, but he could have that vineyard in southern France. I don't know if he ever did it. If they ever did it, I certainly never got to enjoy it. But the dream of it and the possibility of it was enlightening. MCM Peggy Phillips. Again, I knew her personally. I met MCM Peggy Phillips sometime between 92 and 97 election in Yamacraw. She was a force. She was a force. And Peggy didn't take no foolishness from anybody. Whatever Peggy thought, and forgive me for saying Peggy, because I don't know if I dared to say Peggy to her face, but that is how she was referred to. So forgive me for the familiarity. But she was a constant there in Yamacraw. She was a soldier. And she represented, my mom represented the people, but she represented the FNM with a passion. And she went door to door with various outreach efforts to try to ensure that Yamacraw remained FNM. I know her daughter only in passing, Mrs. Hillhouse, but I express condolences to the family on both my behalf and on the behalf of my mother, Dame Janet, and the other old FNMs. And when I say old FNMs, those who are no longer the senior ones, who are no longer day to day on the battlefield, but who nonetheless still follow the battle in Yamacraw. She will be missed, and we thank her for her service to the party, to Yamacraw, and to the nation. And finally, but not least of all, Mr. Obernier. I personally only knew him for a little while in this place, but he greeted me here, if I could say that. He welcomed me here, spoke to me personally. He was a gentleman. But I came to learn from him that he was a friend of my husband's, and he would regularly send messages home with me for Brent. And they were part of a grouping of House of Assembly employees, clerks, the former clerk, Mr. Tynes, some of whom have deceased. And forgive me, I don't remember the gentleman's name, but he used to play baseball. But they were a crew that would meet in here on Friday evenings and break down the affairs of the nation from the unique places that they sat. And he often told me how he missed those gatherings and would send messages with a laugh home for me for Brent. When I got the news of his passing, it's not often I get news before Brent, but on that occasion I did. And when I saw him later that morning and told him who had passed, he immediately expressed shock and regret, as we all were. May all of their souls rest in peace. We thank them all for their contributions in their various ways to the nation, and may they all rise in glory. We're here today to debate the continuation of the resolutions necessary to empower the government to be able to make any necessary emergency orders with respect to the coronavirus. As Minister Thompson said, it's extremely important to phrase this correctly. We are not here to make further orders. We're not here to impose further restrictions. We are here to debate the continuation of the government's power to do so should it be necessary. Before getting into the substance of my contributions, I wish to congratulate the government of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, as advised by our world-class Bahamian medical team, on the obvious success of the coronavirus policy in containing the spread of the virus, particularly after the second surge, which the rest of the world is now currently enduring. However, one cannot congratulate the government and the medical advisors without recognizing the mental anguish and the economic hardship on individuals and businesses. As we are not yet through this crisis, I would like to see us move towards the creation of ventilation and air filtration policies, especially for larger commercial workspaces, which would permit offices which employ larger numbers of people and restaurants to return to work and reopen more fully to normal business practices. Such policies and investments would not be in vain, as they would assist with stopping the spread of any airborne illness now and in the future. That would probably be the only thing I would like to really see us begin to address. But as I said, I congratulate the government. But most of all, I congratulate the Bahamian people on this success. Without the commitment of each and every one of us, no policy by any government could have been successful. Yes, some of us groused, some of us just complained, and some of us just embraced and indeed welcomed the policy. Some of those complaints were justified and some were unjustified. Some of the criticisms had merit. All of the tears were definitely justified as we suffered economic hardship, trials and struggles and losses, both of life and financially, business, jobs. But nonetheless, in the face of such adversity and challenges, the majority of us followed the policies which some countries in the world are only just beginning to implement. In Nassau, and I say Nassau because this is where I am and this is what I can observe, one is hard-pressed to find a citizen without a mask on in public. In Nassau, one is hard-pressed to enter a business establishment where there's no sanitizer at the door and where they're not requested to immediately sanitize upon entering. Indeed, some businesses go so far as to take your temperature as you walk in the door. In Nassau, social distancing is for the most part practiced in public spaces. Our businesses seek to limit crowding in public spaces. The Bahamian people have come to understand fully how this virus is transferred and how to mitigate against the spread. And we have embraced these policies. I am truly so proud of us as a people. We had very few restrictions over the holidays. Despite, again, all of this fervor, the truth is that the economy pretty much was opened up over the holidays. And I'm not gonna lie, I was scared when they rolled back further restrictions. And I was so certain, oh my God, here come the parties start and party can done. I truly believe that, and I must apologize to you, my people. I sold you short. I really sold you short. I was convinced. I was 100% certain. Boy, come January, restrictions. We're gonna have restrictions because I know we're gonna get together in large family gatherings. We're gonna have parties. We're gonna do all the things we shouldn't do. But guess what? There has been no surge. You know, this virus has no mercy. And so therefore, I think we know beyond a shadow of a doubt that if we had not observed the protocols over the holidays, that surge would have happened. But the fact that it hasn't happened says that the people followed the protocols. The people gave up celebrating their holidays in our traditional manners to control the spread. The sacrifice has been great. And indeed, it cannot yet be measured in real terms. But we, the people, are now reaping the reward of our collective responsibility. Even as some on the sidelines try to encourage mass civil disobedience against policies designed to save lives and to avoid the collapse of our healthcare system and indeed our economy. Make no mistake that if we had let COVID run rampant in this city, our economy would have had no chance. So when we speak to, we did restrictions and we killed the economy, you would have had a false self of illusion of all being well until the bubble burst. and it would have taken much longer to bring things under control. My God, it wasn't even that bad here, and the CDC issued travel guidelines against coming to the Bahamas. Imagine if we had a full-blown episode. We must not fool ourselves with false illusions of what having no policy in place and having no guidelines would mean. Like all of a sudden it would mean a healthy economy. The world, our economy, sadly, is based upon what happens in the world. And the world's economy is down. Right now, even though we're open, people aren't coming here. This is the reality of our situation. And we must take necessary steps to maintain low spread in our community. So as I was saying, while there were some who even dared to say, well, if we all disobey, ain't nothing they could do. How outrageous, how irresponsible, how reckless, how much disregard for one's country must one have. But thank God, our people showed how wise they are and how sensible they are, and they ain't no fools. So, while the rest of the world is closing and locking down, while the rest of the world is adopting policies that we've had in place since the beginning of the pandemic, we are successfully opening up in stages our local economy. It is obvious that commerce is returning. Today, when I decided to rush back home to go and put some finishing touches on this contribution, I became panicked as I went along the Eastern Road because the traffic was from Montague to Sans Souci, just as it used to be pre-pandemic. And quite frankly, it hasn't been like that. That's why I thought I could dash back, because you just cruised up and down the Eastern Road. Not today. The traffic was to Sans Souci, which says commerce is returning. People were on the move to get where they were going by 9 o'clock. So this actually was probably the first time that when I saw bumper-to-bumper traffic, which I would have to endure, I felt optimistic. I felt happy to see the traffic back on the Eastern Road. But when I see what is going on in the world and the numbers of people in the first world refusing to do the simplest things to control the spread of the virus, like wear a mask in public, I am so proud of us, the Bahamian people. The government's policies could not succeed without their being observed by a significant majority. As we fight this pandemic, despite the noise in the marketplace, by our actions, we, all of us, are living up to our national motto: forward, upward, and onward together. We are here today to debate the necessity of continuing to give the government, through the competent authority, the power to make emergency orders without delay to control and stop the spread of the virus. When I hear or read comments in the public forum, it is clear to me that many misunderstand the purpose of today's debate. I actually don't know that that is a mistake or not intentional, but it is clear that they misunderstand the purpose of the debate. When asked what they think about this debate, it is common to hear the response, I don't think we need any more lockdowns. We're not here to debate the need for a lockdown today. I repeat, we are not here to debate the need for a lockdown today. Thankfully, that is not even a consideration at this time. We are here to debate whether or not the government still needs the power to make emergency orders with respect to the spread of the virus. It is clear to me from what is going on in the world that we are still in a state of emergency. Indeed, the threat may even be more serious than it was in the past as more virulent strains of the virus have developed. There is the UK variant, which spreads more quickly and is more deadly. I actually privately wonder whether or not we had such a variant here between June, July, and September of last year. The truth is that the significance of that period may be told by way of sampling, but that seems to have been unusual in its nature. In any event, there is also the South African variant and the Brazilian variant. God forbid one of those variants of this virus should hit our shores. I shudder to think what it would mean. Not just to spread the virus and the loss of more loved ones, but also to our slowly reopening local economy. But should one of those variants come to our shores, then the government, acting through the competent authority and on the advice of our coronavirus medical team, must be able to act swiftly and to make the necessary orders to control the spread. I do not think that this is even a debatable point. The government cannot be in the position of having to come to Parliament to debate the whole process again, to seek the governor's consent, the governor general's consent, and then to debate the same, a process which can take up to 2 weeks. We know from experience that waiting 2 weeks while the virus is spreading to make protective orders can have disastrous consequences and can lead to longer periods of restrictions in order to control the spread. The government must be empowered to act quickly. This is what we are here to talk about. For those that say that having such measures in place erodes the role of Parliament, that statement is far too broad in its nature. During the course of the emergency orders, from last March to date, Parliament has met and passed numerous acts. Indeed, on the motion of an independent member, the Parliament has even appointed a select committee comprised of government, opposition, and independent members to look at the country's natural resources and to report back to Parliament and the Bahamian people. The role of Parliament has not been eroded. But on the issue of controlling the spread of the virus, the government is empowered to act quickly in the best interests of the Bahamian people and its economy. Inasmuch as the opposition rises to object to the need for the continuation of the power to make these orders, and inasmuch as they refuse to acknowledge the success of the policies to date, I truly question whether or not they are truly concerned to protect the welfare of the people and by extension our economy, or if they are just interested in scoring what they perceive to be political points at any cost, even at the cost of lives. They have a history of fear-mongering when we have to return to debate the need to continue these provisions. On the last occasion, the spin was that the government would use the power to lock the people down for the holidays. The constant noise in the marketplace is that we will pass the extension and then we will lock down the country. This government has not sought to lock down the country since the one-day lockdown in August. Have there been any restrictions of various degrees? Yes. Has there been a complete lockdown? No. In fact, since the debate in December, the restrictions have consistently been eased as the virus remains under control. It is the spread of the virus and the strain on our healthcare system that dictates the necessary policy measures. Excuse me. The opposition constantly speak to the need to have a plan, but their leader has refused to attend coronavirus briefings in order to be informed by the medical professionals and to hear their advice. They published a plan which is available online. I looked at their plan. Their first recommendation is to make free testing available to Bahamians. When persons reported to the designated public facilities in the belief that they had COVID or upon examination were suspected of having COVID, a free test was administered. That was always the situation. Free testing was not and is not available for persons who needed tests for traveling purposes or just because they wanted a test to put their minds at ease. Resources cannot be wasted. So free testing was and is available where warranted. Their second recommendation was to trace. When they made this recommendation, the government of the Bahamas already had traces in place. Their third recommendation, isolate, protect families and communities by providing safe, comfortable facilities for COVID-positive individuals. This too was in place. I personally know of a person who tested positive and was offered the opportunity to go to the government-operated facility or to quarantine at home after it had been ascertained that theirs was an appropriate place to quarantine in place. So the ability to quarantine Five minutes? What time is it?
Yeah, I can move it.
Pardon me.
Yeah, Madam Deputy, Senator Dean has about 5 more minutes to go. So what I'll move is a motion that the business of the Senate continue beyond 1 p.m. so that she can finish, and then we'll adjourn for an hour for lunch.
Okay, so a second.
I rise to second, Madam Deputy.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded that the Senate suspend for 5 minutes beyond.
No.
Continue beyond.
That the business continues for 5 minutes beyond the 1 o'clock hour.
Yeah,
As many as are in favor say aye. Those opposed nay. The ayes have it. The business will continue.
Thank you, colleagues. The point that I was making was that there's already in place and was in place the ability for a COVID positive person to quarantine at a government facility. Their fourth recommendation, treat, secure, treat. And by that, they have secure therapeutic medicines, expand personnel and hospital capacity. This too had been put in place ahead of their published plan. The government established the COVID treatment center at the former Doctors Hospital West for critical cases. We opened the South Beach Clinic for additional treatment and beds. We built an additional capacity at the Princess Margaret Hospital. And when the surge was at its worst, we requested the assistance of Samaritan's Purse to build a field hospital to treat our people. The fifth recommendation, to protect doctors, nurses, and hospital staff. This is no doubt a controversial and politicized issue, but successive ministers of health have represented on more than one occasion that the necessary equipment is in place. The sixth recommendation, educate. The government's education program cannot be questioned. There was and is a robust education program concerning how the virus spreads and how to protect oneself. The evidence of that is evident in which we have already congratulated ourselves on both sides, the observance by the Bahamian people. They didn't pull those principles and policies out of the air. Those came from the recommendations and guidance of the Bahamian government and the education of the population as to how to control and mitigate against the spread. The seventh was to ventilate. The government was very good about suggesting that as much activity as possible be conducted outdoors. Indeed, they even went so far as to preclude many people from continuing to operate, indoors where large gatherings occurred. To date, the government remains reluctant, while there is still low-level spread in the community, to allow indoor activities of more than 20 persons. John, I'm gonna take the mask off. Thank you. But thank you. They recommended the inclusion of experts, fair and quick enforcement of rules, and tracking the positivity rate as the 8th plank of their plan. Again, all of these measures are and were in place. They then recommended tracking and supporting recoveries and providing economic support as the 9th and 10th elements of their plan, both measures which were already in place. In short, the opposition did not and has not suggested anything which the government was not already doing. What they should say when they ask, where's the plan, is, where's the glossy printed up summation of your plan? See, that's what the opposition is good at. They market themselves well by speaking about what is already being done and claiming it as their own plan. I acknowledge we do not do that as well. What we do well is getting the job done. We don't sit down and talk about what needs to be done. We don't waste time and resources in the middle of an emergency to say, draw up the glossy plan. We make a plan and put that plan in action, and it's evident by the fact that each one of those suggestions was on the ground before anything was printed. Those things were being done. So while they talk, we work our plans on the ground. I remember in the early days of this pandemic, the naysayers telling the government to adopt the Swedish policy. Let the virus spread. Although some people will die, most will not. We will develop herd immunity. The economy will then be allowed to flourish. I thank my God that our government did not follow the advice, did not listen to them, but rather stayed the course and followed the advice of our own medical professionals. But look at Sweden today. On their official government site, they announced the passage of the COVID-19 Act in January 2021, this year. On their official government website, it states that the government has adopted a government bill for a temporary act to prevent the spread of COVID-19. The legislation is intended to give the government the authority to adopt more binding communicable disease control measures than was previously possible. The act entered into force on 10th of January 2021 and is in effect until 30th September 2021. That's the Swedish position today. I don't intend to go down the road that the learned Attorney General and leader of the opposition business have already argued today, and which the Honorable Attorney General has already expounded on in the earlier debate, wherein he has explained why it is that we cannot carry out all of the emergency order provisions by way of an act of parliament. That is already ground well trodden, and besides, I don't pretend that I will make the argument as elucidly as the learned Attorney General did. But the point here is that the Swedish government is now passing the relevant legislation to enact, well, first of all, that act itself is very much like what we are currently debating, giving the government the power to pass restrictive regulations to control the spread. So that's what they have done. That's what's being done all over the world where the powers don't exist. The only difference is that they have to do it by way of an act, and the power for our emergency orders is contained within our Constitution. So, those who were commending the Swedish approach to the government of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, Sweden is now going the way of the government of the Bahamas, and indeed the way of many governments all over the world. When we were in our second phase of the virus, there were those amongst us who admonished us to be more like Barbados. And we pray for the success of all our sister Caribbean nations. But as it was in the beginning of this pandemic, it is the case now that they are seeking to be more like us. They are implementing the same types of measures that we had to implement to bring the virus under control. In short, the government needs to continue to have the power to respond to this virus quickly by making emergency orders. From my point of view, the debate is not about whether or not this power is necessary. If, and I emphasize if, there is any debate, it can only be about the necessity of certain provisions that are or are not in the current emergency order. I want to end. Well, I just would want to put, the opposition constantly says what we cannot do, what we should not do, etc. The opposition, other than pointing to their 10-point plan, has not actually said what we should do. And I've spoken to that 10-point plan. I don't know what they propose to do if the emergency orders were not in place. I don't know what they would propose to do if we didn't vote for this and the emergency orders dissolved. They have acknowledged the need for certain things to control the spread. It is one thing to stand up here and make noise and say, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it, but what would you do? You cannot tell me that you would just let them all dissolve and tell the people, go free. There's no requirement any longer to wear a mask. There's no requirement any longer for social distancing. There's no requirement anymore not to gather in tent. How about it? They don't say what they just say, don't do this. And so then tomorrow when we all wake up, we go about our business. I suppose some of us do a jig and a dance and say, yeah, we got it, we got it. And then God help us, where will we be? X number of weeks later or months later. So don't tell me what is your plan. You're talking about what is our plan? We work in our plan. Tell me what is your plan beyond stop this. You know? So that being said, well, you know, you can't just say don't do something. You must come with a solution. I believe you'll take time. So
please allow the senator to finish her remarks. Be respectful, please.
As I indicated, there is recognized from the other side that there is a real risk of a third surge. And we must protect ourselves, our people, our economy. We must ensure that we have the ability to do so. Finally, I thank those on the front line of this pandemic. Our world-class coronavirus team, doctors, nurses, hospital and clinic staff, including the sanitization staff and all of our security forces. All of you have kept us safe and healthy, and we thank you. Thank you, Madam Vice President.
As many, Senator Bethel.
Madam Chair, I move that the Senate on its rising be suspended. Oh, okay.
The chair recognizes Senator Colby Davis.
Thank you, Madam President. I now beg leave to move that the Senate on its rising the business of the Senate on its rising be suspended for 1 hour until 10 minutes past 2 p.m. this afternoon, if I may obtain a second.
Madam Vice President, I rise to second.
It's been moved and seconded that the business of the Senate be suspended until 10 minutes after 2 this afternoon. As many as are in favor, say aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The Senate will now suspend until 2:10 this afternoon.